My name is Mike McDonald. I'm a product manager on Firebase, and I'm here with Jen and Abe. And we're going to build a really, really exciting application. So I'm going to start off with the premise of this application, and that is language is hard. So how many people, well, actually, everyone put your hand up. We're going to start with this. How many people, and keep your hand up, if you speak one language? Excellent. Everyone speaks one language. Keep your hands up if you speak two languages. So my hand immediately goes down. OK, 3 languages. OK. Spoken languages. So if you speak in JavaScript, we can talk about that later. 4 languages, is that OK? And 5 languages. There will be one winner. OK, you are. Remember her? What's your name? Pavia. You will be our contestant on The Price is Right when we do this. OK. Moving on. Language, though, that's something that I really struggle with, right? So I travel a lot for work. I've been to 9 countries. And as I said, I speak English. That's really, really difficult to get around, right? I am constantly pointing at things on menus or using Google Translate. I would love it if I spoke 5 languages or more, like you. So technology and actually science fiction has kind of dreamed of this for years. So how many people have read Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy? A couple of people? So there's the idea there of a thing called the babblefish. And it's a device or an animal, I guess, that you can put in your ear. And no matter what language someone is speaking, you can automatically understand whatever they're saying. I would love it if that technology exists. And I've seen a couple samples of that, right? So I watched a demo a couple years back of a voice-to-voice translation software where there was a bunch of kids in a classroom in the United States speaking to a bunch of kids somewhere in South America. And the kids in the US were speaking English. And literally just seconds later, the kids in South America were hearing Spanish and vice versa. That's awesome, but that probably took years and years to develop. And I would love it if, maybe it was just a device that I could, put in my ear or something, which is great, right? Because like a week ago, Google was like, hey, that's a great problem. I wish we could solve that. And if you guys have seen the Pixel Buds, one of the big features of that, they're headphones. You put them in, and you say, hey, I want to learn Japanese, and someone will speak in Japanese, and it'll automatically translate it. Also awesome, but we do not have 30 minutes to build hardware on stage. We need to do something using a piece of technology that everyone has with them right now, right? Let's build an app, because everyone loves apps. It's 2017. Apps are the new hotness. Just like the babblefish, our app is going to let us select a language that we want to hear, and everything at that point on will happen in your selected language. So someone else, maybe Abe or one of our friends in the audience will speak something, and all of the language will come in that chosen language. So how do we build that? Right? If you hadn't come to this talk, you would go home and start immediately spinning up servers, right? Your mobile application would make RESTful calls to some, application server. It could be a Rails app or a Django app or an Express app. And that's handling all of the interesting things in your application, right? That is doing your authentication. That is sending things out to a database or retrieving things from storage or even doing your machine learning. But that's really difficult, right? We have 20, 25, 30 minutes to build this application. And if we wanted to do this, who is going to spin up our servers? Who is going to provision them and manage them and secure them? How are we authenticating people? Do we have the appropriate performance that we need so that when we all walk out of here and everyone loves this application and you share it with all your friends and we have 100 million monthly active users, is that one server going to handle it, right? Or are we just going to be paying an obscene amount of money? Luckily, you all came here, and you all, hopefully at this point, know a little bit more about Firebase. So you'll learn the secrets of how to use Firebase to solve those problems very quickly. Firebase applications, unlike the traditional applications on the previous slide, eliminate that application server and let your devices talk directly to our powerful managed infrastructure. Right? We handle really difficult problems like client-side authentication. So if you've ever written OAuth code, I'm assuming a few of you have written OAuth code, it's terrible. You don't want to do it. With Firebase, you don't have to. We've kind of taken it up, abstracted it, and given you a really clean interface to just do the thing that your user cares about. And lastly, Firebase scales automatically. So when you walk out and you all have my application, you can all share it with your friends, and we go from 0 to n overnight. Firebase's smart clients handle all of those really difficult pieces, so you can focus on building an app that your users love. OK, so in case you weren't paying attention during the keynote or somehow stumbled into this conference and have no idea what Firebase is, the brief slide, Firebase, again, is Google's mobile platform. It helps you develop your apps on top of Google Cloud Platform, engage with your user base, and really understand what they're doing. It's a one-stop shop for mobile application development. But there are a lot of products on this slide, and we have very short time. I'm going to invite Abe up here to talk about a few of these products and how they help make our app more successful.
Thanks, Mike. I'll be honest, that's a lot of orange circles. That's probably too many for us to explain right now, and probably too many for you to dive in and really understand in depth. And that's okay, because you don't need to. From the beginning, a core tenet of Firebase was that you would not have to use every part of it. Today, if we're building an app that needs some specific functionality, we can pick and choose out of this array of features. You don't have to pull in the whole SDK. You don't have to use every feature. And if you have some other solution for part of this that you like, that you want to keep using, you can do that and use Firebase for the rest of your application. Today, we're only going to be using 3 features. It's cloud storage, Firebase authentication, and Cloud Firestore. Cloud storage is important because we're going to be dealing with files. We're going to be uploading audio from devices to translate. Authentication is important because we're going to be doing that securely. We can't have people just throwing files at our server and willy-nilly writing over other people's data. And lastly, Cloud Firestore is important because we need real-time synchronization. As soon as our translations are done, we need everyone to hear them as quickly as possible. So we'll hand that off to Cloud Firestore. Let's dive in a little more detail, though. Cloud storage for Firebase is an amazing way to upload files. It is honestly amazing. If you've ever dealt with files as a concept, if you're saying, I want a profile, like picture for my user, and I want to upload that. That seems simple. It seems trivial. It's trivial to describe, but to implement, there are a million concerns. What if they don't upload a JPEG? What if they upload an MP3? How do I handle that? How do I know what they're uploading? What if they upload an 800 megabyte ISO instead of an image? Can I stop that? What if I run out of storage space on my hard drive? What is my persistence story? All of these things are concerns, and that's not even to mention things like network flakiness, network latency, and the scalability once you get the file to your server. This is literally an issue that you could spend weeks messing with. But with Firebase, we make it simple. Cloud storage lets you take a device, talk directly to our scalable infrastructure, and upload files securely, quickly, and in a way that is extra resilient. You're not just making an HTTP request and throwing a file at it. We'll do recovery, and we'll make sure that the file gets up there accurately in a safe, quick way. Once it's up there, though, the second half of the story is, of course, serving that file. In cloud storage, it'll be sent down to as many devices as you want. If that's 4 devices, that's great. If it's 4,000, that's great too. You can just get a URL, normal download URL. You can embed it in a page. You can get a stream of bytes. Any way you want to consume that file out of cloud storage, you'll be able to do. And of course, if you want to restrict access and say, oh, only this person can upload documents to their own folder, only them can read it, that's all right, because we have Firebase authentication securing this whole thing. Firebase authentication is, like Mike said, a wrapper around traditional OAuth technologies along with some extra Firebase magic. OAuth is a huge pain, and one of the reasons it's a huge pain is because it's different every time. It might be a standard, but there's nothing standard about it. Every implementation is just a little different. So if you wanted to live in a world where you had Google login, and you had Twitter login, and GitHub, and email password, you would spend weeks going through and figuring out how to deal with the handshakes and the extra effort required to implement each of these providers. But in Firebase, not only do we make it easy to set this up, but in your code, regardless of how someone authenticated, that user looks the same to you. You get back a Firebase user object, has the same fields, has the same data, and works with your security rules and other services in the exact same way. We'll see this later on. We're going to build an app that has multiple sign-in options on multiple native platforms, and they're going to sign in and access the same resources without any extra effort from us. Because once they're signed in, it's always that same unique ID. It's always secured to that specific user, and you just don't have to worry about it. The last part, once we've uploaded that file securely, once we've dealt with it, somehow translated it, maybe using some sort of magic, we need to sync that back down. Now, you might have heard today for the first time about Cloud Firestore, our brand new NoSQL database. And the truth is, it wasn't announced today. It came out about a month ago, and we've had EAPs for a long time. And we really, really think this is an amazing way to deal with extremely scalable applications that require a ton of querying, but still want speed and all the other coolness that you expect from a Firebase product. In this case, Cloud Firestore is a little different than what you might have seen in the past. We use a document and collection model. If you're not familiar with those NoSQL jargon, then you can go ahead and think of collections as lists and documents as just, objects of data. In this case, we're going to have 3 top-level collections. That's uploads. When we upload a file, we'll write to the uploads collection to actually kick off the process to translate it. We'll have transcriptions, which is the transcribed version. In other words, if I say hello, we will have a string hello in there. And then we will have translations. And that is what will actually get passed back to our application. So we'll take the transcription, run it through some magic, and get back a whole bunch of different languages. So hopefully everyone in the world can communicate and do so peacefully. And of course, this is all done in real time. Connecting those different collections, synchronizing it back down to the client is all done with the real-time aspects of Cloud Firestore. We're not polling, we're not waiting for something to happen. We don't have to do an exponential backoff in case it took too long or anything silly like that. We just know the clients who want that translation are going to get it as soon as it's available, so we don't have to worry. But of course, this is all abstract. We're talking about products, and I'm telling you random things that we can do, but that's not very interesting. We are mostly all engineers, so let's write some darn code. And of course, because we are not all Android engineers and we are not all iOS engineers, it's not fun to do one or the other, so we're going to do both at the exact same time, which is extremely difficult. So we will see how it goes. The very first thing you need to do, once you've set up your Firebase project, imported the SDK, and initialized Firebase in your app, is just access the services you want to use. In this case, that's those 3 services we talked about: Cloud Storage, Cloud Firestore, and authentication. Once we've done that, we can just jump straight to it. Let's upload a file. To do that, we need to get a storage reference that points to a specific location in Cloud Firestore. Think of it as a folder. It functionally is. And then we can go and actually upload to that location. We'll tack on some metadata, what is a file type, but that's all extra and optional. We're doing it here because we get different types of audio from different devices. Once we get to actually uploading the file, there's one method: put file. And that's the really magical part about this. When you put that file, a million things happen, a million things in a million languages in a million places, but all you care about is, does it get uploaded and can I access it? And to know that it's all uploaded and all complete, we get back a completion listener we can tack on. This completion listener will just tell us, hey, was there some issue? Have I been without internet for a long time, I couldn't upload it? Or did it go completely successfully and get uploaded to cloud storage? When it is uploaded successfully, we're going to go and we're going to write in Cloud Firestore to that uploads collection. That collection is what will trigger off our processing and allow us to actually translate our message. So if we ran this right now, would it work? No, it wouldn't work. And there's one big reason, and that's what I've been talking about this whole time, which is that right now, we're not authenticated. We're not any user in our application. We're just some person who happened to connect, happened to have the right API key and pointed it at a Firebase service. We're not securing this at all. And that's extremely dangerous. So by default, Firebase locks this down, and we say, you have to be authenticated somehow. You have to have Firebase authentication set up. So we're going to go ahead and set up Firebase UI. And Firebase UI is a not brand new, it's quite old, but an amazing open source library that is a headful version of Firebase authentication. Firebase authentication gives you all the methods you need to do all the authentication, but it doesn't actually show anything on screen. It's up to you to wire it up. So Firebase authentication Firebase UI gives you that really pretty screen where it says, oh, pick your provider, what do you want to log in with? Choose whatever you want. And that's all we need to do to actually do authentication. Cloud Storage and Cloud Firestore are now aware of that authentication state, and we can start accessing these resources. And of course, you can go and you can set up whatever security rules you want. You can configure it. Different people can write to different locations. In this case, we're just checking that you're authenticated before letting you upload. Now that we've done that, the last thing we really need to do is listen to that translations collection. That collection is where our final translations are going to come out of. So we're going to create a reference to that collection, just like we did before. But this time we're going to do something different. We're going to use an on-snapshot listener. And this listener is our way of saying, give me real-time updates. It's a little different than if you've ever used real-time databases like Firebase real-time database or any of the other ones. But the general idea is the same. We'll order it by a timestamp, so we always get the most recent translation. And we'll check, make sure the document exists when it comes in, look at what the event is, but then most importantly, we'll call out to a native API using the language you selected in the UI, and we'll say, hey, speak this out. So if you write to that collection, if any translations come in, both of our apps will speak it out. And that's basically it. We've written all the client-side code in order to make a translation app right now for 2 different platforms. And that's absolutely crazy. So let's give this a shot. We're actually going to try it using one of the greatest machine learning APIs known to man, Mr. Mike McDonald. He is going to go into our Firebase console and give this a shot. So once he logs in. Because of course it's secure, so he has to actually type his whole password and everything like that. And you'll notice that the really cool thing about this is that we added like 2 lines of code, but he's getting a full native Google login experience. All the things about saving your password and all the niceties you expect with Google authentication in general are brought in with Firebase UI. So here we can see this is a simple object. It has a unique ID, then a languages object, and that just has a translation. In this case, we're only translating to English and Spanish because those are the only languages the 3 speakers know. But with any luck, if you select English on your app and you send this in, this will speak out to us. So let's give this a shot. We'll write this to the database, and we'll see if it makes it down to the application.
The food is delicious.
There you go. That was very fast. So that might have been very, very fast. And of course, you might be thinking, well, on stage, we faked that. That's actually how fast it was. That was Firestore real-time syncing back in the US to here extremely, extremely quickly. So that works. But Mike McDonald, although he's a great translator from English to English, he doesn't scale to other languages. And if you tell him to translate more than 5 things, he gets grumpy. So we're going to come up with a better way to translate things. I'm going to pass it over to Jen to talk about what we can do to really make this into a great translation app. Jen?
Thanks, Abe. All right, can we go back to the slides? Thank you. OK, so as Abe said, we're not quite done here, because as great as Mike is at translating, that really doesn't scale very far past just the 3 of us. So we're going to write some software to fill in that gap using the trendiest way possible, by adding some machine learning. But designing and training our own modules from scratch takes a lot of time, and that's not what this talk is about. We just built an app really fast, and we wanted to get it working fast. So luckily, there are some pre-trained machine learning APIs, and we can pick from a big menu of APIs that are part of the Google Cloud Platform. They solve a lot of common problems that developers have, and in this case, the 2 that we're going to be using are for transcribing, we use the Cloud Speech API, and for translation, we use the Cloud Translation API. So there you go. Problem solved, right? Well, almost. How are we going to wire these really cool APIs up to our serverless app? Traditionally with Firebase, apps would bake everything into the client. And that's really great because it's serverless. And as you saw, we covered a lot of ground in a short period of time. But we run into a few challenges with this model, and these are challenges faced by a lot of apps as they start to grow and get more complex. For instance, secrets. So users can learn a lot from the files that make up your app. So pretty much anything you put in there, the users may be able to find it, such as pre-release game code, or API keys, such as the ones we would be using for our cool APIs that I mentioned. Also, we have to worry about resources. Phones get faster all the time, but the battery only has enough oomph to crunch so many numbers, or in this case, so many phrases. Finally, there's just the idea that it's a real pain to have to write the same functionality over in all versions of your app for each platform. It would be much more convenient if you could have that all in one place. Now, our app is pretty simple, but it still has all three of these challenges. And they can be mitigated by moving our secrets and resource-intensive code into the cloud. And since it's in the cloud, we'll only have to write one version of it, thus solving our third problem. And if we dip into our old bag of tricks, we might solve it this way. We might spin up some servers on the compute engine, create APIs backed by Django or Node.js, but we know there's more complexity than meets the eye in this little cute compute icon. If we do it like this, we'll still have to worry about caches, microservices, and load balancers. And if you're very familiar with Firebase, you probably know where I'm going with this. Before we know it, we're back here, lots of complexity, which we're trying to get this going really quickly so that Mike can go travel around the world speaking other languages. So of course, we'll use Cloud Functions. That gives us the minimal glue that we need to run our serverless app and solve these challenges. And of course, Cloud Functions works across many different Firebase features, but in this case, we're going to be focusing on using it for Cloud Firestore. But why show you some more silly diagrams when we could show you some really cool live coding? So Abe is going to show us what it's like to build these Cloud Functions that we're going to use in our app. So we'll start by attaching two functions to Cloud Firestore. One is going to listen to any documents added to the uploads collection, and the other is going to listen for documents added to the transcripts collection. So first, we'll import the Cloud and Firebase APIs and initialize the admin SDK to use. Then, when this initial function is triggered when we upload the metadata, it's going to be extracted using the language, encoding, and sample rate to use the transcription. So here you'll see, we'll run speech.recognize to get the transcription. Then we'll write that transcription back into Firestore to a new document in the transcripts collection. This document, of course, will trigger our next function to run. And again, what we're going to do is take that transcription and translate across all these various different languages. Once they have all been translated, we write that result back to Firestore. And this is the part that our app is listening to. So once it sees that something else is written to that area in Firestore, it's going to read out that new latest translation for us. All right, looks great, thanks. Can we go back to the slides? Thank you. So there's still one more step with these Cloud Functions. We need to deploy. And we're very brave to do some live coding and play it for you, but a live deploy can take quite some time. And again, we want to get this app going quickly. So through the use of video magic, we're going to deploy our app. And I'm going to hand it back to Mike to show you how this works.
Thanks, Jen. So, if you're paying really careful attention to this slide, you'll notice that in addition to the functions, we also deployed something else. So, for the grand unveiling, if everyone would like to go to babelfire.cloud on their mobile devices, bring that up and select your favorite language. Give people a minute. We should start hearing some words in other languages very soon. I feel like we could have had a QR code. People would just... Oh, there you go. I heard someone. Yeah? People have it up? Jen, do you want to say something into your app and see if you can get... There you go.
But because this is the demo data, it's only working in English and Spanish, the languages we put in.
Yeah. Let's add another one.
Real data then, huh? Okay. Let's see.
Make
If
sure
I
to
remember my 6th grade Spanish here. ¿Dónde está la biblioteca? Everyone knows that one. Hopefully this is only for input and not also output, because if it's using this for...
We're getting that phrase a
The
lot.
food is very delicious, it's true.
It is very delicious.
Oh,
Oh, I just heard biblioteca somewhere. Okay, there you go. Can we get our member of the audience who speaks multiple languages to come up and try this in a language? Well, we did Spanish. Do you speak one of the languages on this list? Do you mind coming up and everyone welcome her to the stage? Do you mind standing over with Jen and utilizing that app?
come on down.
So everyone, select the language that you want to hear. We promise it'll
So
work
you're
this
gonna
time.
Click record, and then when you're done, click stop.
मेरा नाम Firebase है.
Okay. Wait in anticipation.
We forgot to say it had to be work
मेरा
appropriate.
नाम Firebase.
Oh, there you go. Oh, is it set to English?
Well, it's going to be English on my, it's going to show up as English on my screen, but it still translates it and all that.
You so,
Okay,
I think
go
set
for
it set it to Hindi.
Yeah.
मेरा नाम Firebase है.
मेरा नाम परवेज है.
There you go.
The crowd of translators.
Crowd of translations.
The wave of
Awesome.
translations.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So there we go. Between the three of us, in how long was that? That was just under half an hour.
4.5 minutes.
Just under half an hour, we built 2 entire applications, complete with a backend that did translation from any of about 8 or 10 languages. Before today, you may have gone home and spun up a server and written your own machine learning algorithms, and you would be taking a lot of time. You know, people like us might beat you to market. You'd be paying a lot of money to maintain those servers, and you'd be spending a whole lot more time dealing with server issues rather than building features. Abe came onto the stage and showed us a really cool way of getting rid of all of that, replacing it with Firebase and doing exactly what your end users care about, right? Uploading those audio files, synchronizing data in real time, securing all of that information. And then Jen came and showed us how to leverage Cloud Functions to glue all of those pieces together, right? She took Cloud Functions and connected Cloud Firestore to the speech and translate APIs. And just as easy as it was to wire up those two, there are a ton of other services within Google Cloud Platform that you can take Firebase and Cloud Functions and stitch together, right? More pre-trained ML services, just general other, there's a jobs API. If you ever want to look for a job, you can do that on Cloud Platform as well. And it's just as easy to trigger those events and chain functions together as it was in this talk. It turns really complex processes into step-by-step workflows that scale as you need them. So thank you all very much for coming. Hopefully you've learned a lot from this talk. Feel free to reach out to us on Twitter, or we will all be in the Ask Firebase Lounge right after this. Thank you all very much, and enjoy the rest of the conference.